My name's Trianna Krupp, and I'm a sophomore studying industrial and operations. And my project this year was on factors affecting public support on carbon capture and utilization policy. Next slide, please. So, to begin my project, I first started looking at state level policies, and I came to the conclusion that there was limited policy on CCU overall, and the policy that was present usually had shortcomings. So then I kind of took a step up and I started to look at federal policy. And I came to the same conclusions for federal policy, but additionally, CCU products are getting lumped into all the other products in the policy world. So after figuring this out, I briefly looked at international policy to see what they were doing and see if they were doing anything better than us. But after that, I took a step back and I started to look at public perception because I realized that the policy was not going to get passed unless they had the public support. So I wanted to see what the public thought was going wrong. And through this, I found a really good piece by Caitlin Ramey, actually, and her piece was called Exploring Public Perceptions of Carbon Capture and Utilization in the US. A brief summary of this, she goes over overall support for CCU, expectations about CCU's effects in different fields such as health and the economy. And lastly, she went over whether these perceptions varied depending on which aspects of CCU were being discussed. But the main thing I took away from this whole report was that people were less supportive of CCU if it was in their own backyard. They generally were okay with it if it was in different areas, but they didn't have a full understanding. But what they did understand was that they did not want this in their own town. Next slide, please. So after coming to this conclusion from her report, I decided to lay out 3 areas that I thought policy needed to improve on. The first one being transparency and trust. So these companies have been misleading the public and providing fabricated information to greenwash their image. Greenwashing their image just means that they are giving out claims to seem more eco-friendly than their practices actually are. And a great example of this is palm oil. The palm oil industry actually has their own eco label. An eco label is a label placed on a product to show that they are quote unquote more eco friendly than the next. And the one for palm oil is the Round Table on Sustainable Palm Oil Eco Label. And to claim this eco label, these companies have to not burn as a way of deforestation, and they can't use conservation areas, which is already the bare minimum. But on top of that, these are loosely enforced eco standards, and there's little to no third party verification on this information. And just to prove this, the palm oil is responsible for 5% of tropical deforestation and 2.3% of global deforestation. And as well, they commit human rights violations every day in countries such as Indonesia and Malaysia, which are still considered developing countries, just hurting their economy even more. The reason I bring this up is to highlight the manipulation of policies set in place to protect not only the environment, but allow consumers to make conscious choices on picking the eco-friendly option. And the public already has a low trust level in the government, and this just increases the rates surrounding all fields, including CCU. Going into my next point, the policy lacks on keeping up with technological advancement. The majority of people, including policymakers, are still unaware of the complexities of CCU, leading to little cohesion and consistencies in the policies being brought up on the floor, but also implemented currently. And this is because industry growth is moving faster than the policy process is able to move, making it harder for them to create long-term policies because once they think a solution is brought up, there's new innovations that they have to factor in and new nuances that they have to add. So going back to the point I brought up about Caitlin Ramey's work, adequate, well-developed policies that address the new innovations and protect the public are needed because the public are most likely to be less supportive of local projects without a security blanket, that security blanket being the policy protecting not only themselves, but also where they live. And having that less public support will overall damage CCU development in the long run. So moving on to my last area that I thought was good to focus on is that policy has been targeting big businesses. So as we all know, this is a growing field and only helping big businesses is making it harder for startups to thrive and contribute to these innovations. The biggest examples are the tax credits. So that would be the 45Q, 45Z, and 45B, or 40B, sorry. And to put it into perspective, the 45Q tax is for carbon management projects that capture carbon oxides from eligible industries. And if for a company to claim this credit for direct air capture, they need to capture at least 1,000 metric tons of CO2 per year. For electric generating facilities, they need to capture at least 18,750 metric tons of CO2 per year, and the equipment must be designated to capture at least 75% of the unit's baseline of CO2 emissions. And finally, other industrial facilities have to capture at least 12,500 metric tons of CO2 per year. And these are very big numbers, and it's hard for small startups to reach these goals. And if they do reach these goals, like I said, I only mentioned the 45Q tax. So it's hard for them to reach the goals of not only 45Q, but the 45Z and 40B. And this is relevant for my public perceptions because big businesses, people don't trust as much as they don't trust the government. And they don't want to see these big businesses coming into their towns and destroying their areas and exploiting the policy. So they want to see more policies supporting the locals or the startup that's trying to gain traction. Next slide, please. To address these issues, I came up with what I think would be a good area or a good policy to start. So just to preface before I begin, none of this is actually real. It's just my idea of what I think would be beneficial. So as you can see in the corner, I have a little table of all of the areas that CCU projects are present. And this is a lot of local communities being affected. So my idea was that all of these projects would be able to provide annual reports and brochures and one-pagers to the local communities. And in these brochures or one-pagers, they could describe the methods the project is using, why it is progressive, benefits to the host community, and future goals. And additionally, all of this information would have to be third-party verified to ensure that there is no fabrication or lying to the public. And I think this is a good idea because as it stands currently, the big businesses and the communities have a wall between them. And by slowly breaking this wall down and having the big businesses communicating with the smaller public and the smaller towns, it bridges the gap and it shows that they're willing to share what they are doing and willing to share how they are improving the environment or how they're going to try to take their town to the next level. And to incentivize these projects to participate in this, I would provide a direct subsidy for research and development because, as I've been saying, this is a developing field. So I want to be able to put money back into the field to just continue growing it and have it exponentially. And lastly, this would be available for all companies because, again, the big businesses and the small businesses all deserve to have a say in this because it's a developing industry and we need more innovations. Thank you for listening. Please let me know if you have any questions.